In this video, we're going to talk about the different types of information you can enter into Excel, specifically how it's going to look and how you can format it. Now, there's three types of information that can be entered into any cell in Excel. So if we go here to A1, these individual boxes are what are considered our cells. Now, the first option is text. If you type anything with letters in it, so type the word text, it's going to automatically format it so it's on the left side. So this is Excel's default way of telling you that this is a text, and because it's text, it can't work with it. It's not a number. It's just there basically for you to make entries in. The next option here are numbers. So if we enter numbers, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. By default, it's going to put it on the right. So why is it doing this? Excel wants you to know if it can be worked with using formulas or not. So Excel gives us the ability to work with formulas. We can enter algebraic expressions, and we can reference multiple cells. But it can't use letters for formulas. And so if a cell's on the right side, it's telling you that it can actually use that number in calculations. But if it's like a text, like it is if there were the word text, and it's on the left, that tells you can't use it for a calculation. Now, here's the thing. People like to enter things like 32.0 grams for their measurements. And when you hit enter, it goes to left. What that's telling you, that 32.0 G being on the left, is that it's a text box. So it's not going to treat it as a number. And if you try to reference it as a number, it's not going to work. So there's our first two, text and numbers. The other thing we can enter into a cell is a formula. And if you want to enter any formula into Excel, it's always going to start with an equal sign. And this equal sign is how you tell Excel that I want this to be a function. So let's say we want to do 11 times 12. Don't worry, in a later video we're going to talk about the different functions and how to use them. But let's say you want to do 11 times 12. It's 132. Well, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's on the right. So whatever the output of a function is, generally it's accessible as a number. Now there are exceptions to this, but generally if you have numbers and algebraic expressions, you're going to get back out a number. The second thing is that it's not going to show you the formula in the cell itself. So it says 132, this is the output of the formula. But the formula is actually shown up here in the formula bar. So when you highlight the cell, go over it, that's where you can actually see what the function is. Now let's say you want to override this. You've entered in your Excel data and now you want to make it look pretty. Well, there's a lot of options for doing this. Now again, by default, text is going to be on the left, numbers are going to be on the right. So if we highlight the cells we want to format, we have 6 formatting options up here. This top, center, and bottom line is if the cell is actually bigger than the word itself. So let's say we make this text box a little bit bigger. By default, anything entered into a cell is going to be in the bottom of the cell. If we want it to be in the center, click here. If we want it to be on the top, we'll click here. In terms of center, left, and right justification, these are going to be these bottom three here. So if we want everything to be on the left, centered, or right, we click these buttons. Now this is just for aesthetics. It doesn't change how Excel handles it. So if you have a text, which is by default to the left, and you put it to the right, this doesn't somehow make the text accessible for functions now. All it's going to tell you is that all it's going to do right now is just make it look like it's on the right. Now, there are more options when it comes to numbers. So you see this drop-down menu here underneath the number tab. Now, there is a drop-down menu here for formatting cells. It gives you a lot more options. Personally, though, the reason why they have these ribbons is it's a lot easier to work with. Now, there are several options underneath this drop-down menu. General is what the default is. And what general tells you, basically, is that it's going to show every non-zero number except for trailing zeros for decimal points. So let's say you have the number 1,000. It's going to show 1,000, but if you put 1.00 in, you're not going to see anything. So if we go to the right, even though I entered 1.00 in, it's not going to show anything but the leading one. In fact, even in my formula, it's not going to show it. So the next option down is number. And what number does is it shows a fixed number of decimal points, not significant figures, a fixed number of decimal points. So by default, when you click on number, it does 2 decimal points. Now, if we want to increase or decrease, we can use this drop-down menu, or we can use these two options here. So the one on the left increases the number of decimal points. The one on the right decreases the number of decimal points. We also have the option of scientific notation. Now, by default in scientific notation, Excel will only show 2 significant figures. If you want to show more, you've got to use this left arrow or right arrow to increase it. So 2, up 2, down 2. So as you'll notice in Excel, it also uses the E. This is probably something you're familiar with your calculator. E is how it designates powers of 10. So when it says 1E00, it's telling you it's 1 times 10 to the 0. Now let's say we had 98,800. Enter it in. Now it's 9.80 e to the third, telling you it's 9.8 times 10 to the third. Now, to manually enter it in, let's say you want to enter Avogadro's number, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. You would enter that in by typing 6.02, 10 to the 23rd, e to the 23rd. If you ever use an e when you enter a number in, by default, Excel will immediately jump to scientific notation. So if I enter 1, it doesn't do anything. But if I do 1 e to the 0, by default, it will go to scientific notation. So this is how we enter numbers in, the three types of numbers, text, numbers, and formulas. And this is how we can change the formatting. And in a later video, we'll talk about how to make Excel sheets look pretty, and we'll talk about in the next video how to actually reference cells and do basic formulas in Excel.